Alright, so this video is specifically about the deportation of the Oglala Sioux. Um, the Oglala Nation encompasses more than 4 states worth of territory, believe it or not. Parts of it go into more states than that, but the land is pretty extensive historically. It's also historically not there. The most prominent family I'm aware of in the Pine Ridge area is the Picket Pen family. I don't know a lot of Picket Pens, but the 2 that I did meet were alright with me. I exposed the missing women of Hardin, Montana many years ago, and it took another 2 years after I exposed it for the United States and federal governments to actually acknowledge that it was a hotbed for missing and murdered indigenous people. I'm going to post a link to that in the description. However, what I'm speaking out about today is that ICE picked up 4 members of the Oglala Sioux tribe, and they did that in Minneapolis. One of those peoples has been released. The other 3 are still missing. I want to give a shout out to the Sioux Nation for stepping up for their peoples and my peoples, because the 4 peoples that were abducted by ICE were all homeless. Thank goodness they are still considered human beings by at least the Oglala. Now there's a lot of stuff that the gentleman who did the newscast, he's Pine Ridge. That would be the Alliance and Shadron area of Nebraska. When I exposed the missing women of Hardin, Montana, that's just catty corner from there. But it's a different tribal area. It's Crow Agency. Primarily Crow. They were on the United States side. Matter of fact, Custer had Crow Scouts. So the Little Bighorn area was given to the Crow as a smack to the face of everybody else at Little Bighorn. However, that's just historical. Let's get back to the modern day. Mary Mountain Sheep, she helped me out a lot, despite her own issues. When I met her, there was a man named John Nomi, and John Nomi invited me to his trailer. It turned out it wasn't his trailer, it belonged to Mary Mountain Sheep. When she came in and she found out what was going on, she wasn't mad at me. She treated me like I was family. She was mad at John Nomi for claiming it was his house and for inviting strangers into her house. She'd been gone for 30 days of treatment. I went back to see Mary Mountain Sheep, and used to be Lion Shares. She was married for a while there. She died of cancer a few years back. I also want to tell you all a little bit about my family history, something I brought up before. So my grandma had a friend named Rita, and Rita was of Hispanic descent. However, her family had been in the area since before the Louisiana Purchase, so she was local. Well, in 1956, they had a whole bunch of these buses that they'd used for transporting troops from one end of the United States to the other, as far north as Canada and as far south as Texas. And they had all these buses that were done returning American troops to their homes. and they used these buses to pick up brown people. In Nebraska in 1956 is when my grandma, um, her name was Vonnie Southard, Vonnie Bruns, and Vonnie Ty, because she was married several times. But my grandma, her best friend, her name was Rita, and I don't remember Rita's last name. I want to say Horatia, but I'm sure that's wrong. But she remembered that they weren't just picking up Hispanic people whose families had been there their entire lives. They were also picking up the Native Americans that lived in the area. So in 1956, the majority of all Native Americans in western Nebraska just disappeared. Reservations was different, but nobody cared about all those missing people. Now we're getting to the point where we are starting to look back on the past and say, oh, well, look at all the horrible things that we've done. Can we stop doing that? Can we do the right thing now instead of looking back at it and saying, oh, well, that was kind of screwed up? No, it was really screwed up. What's happening to the homeless here is worse than all of these other situations combined. Because the homeless are treated worse than immigrants. The homeless are treated worse by a lot. The stuff that you were pissed off about police doing to people in houses, and you're pissed off at ICE doing it to whoever they want. You've got police officers who want to speak about how what ICE is doing is wrong, but meanwhile, how many of these officers took part in doing those very same things to the homeless? Not just during the Trump administration. During every administration of my lifetime, this war against the poor has been going on. You throw a bunch of mentally ill people out on the streets, and then you want to pretend everybody is mentally ill on the streets. 80% of those on the streets are on the streets because they were fleeing abuse. They were abused into homelessness. Some of them were stolen from, couldn't pay their rent. Some of them were beaten so that they couldn't function. This is our reality. Our predators abuse us until we have post-traumatic stress disorder. And then they pretend that post-traumatic stress disorder is schizophrenia by calling us mentally ill. Kind of like that girl who is being raped by her dad at home. And she tries to tell her mom, but her mom doesn't want to listen. So the girl can't think of any other way to try to get heard. She's tried to talk to all the adults she's supposed to, and it's not working. So she cuts on herself to try to force somebody to listen. Well, then they say, oh, well, she's got suicidal ideations, she's mentally ill, and for the rest of her life, nobody's going to listen to her. Her credibility is gone because she had to do something desperate. Not wanted to. She was forced to. She had no other options. For men, we know we don't have that option. That's why men end their own existence at 5 times the rate of women, starting at the age of 15. Of course, we want to get told that all of these people are alcoholics, don't we? Kind of like we get to hear about how all black people are on crack, and how all these white trailer trash people are on meth, and how all Jews are after your money and all Mexicans are after your bike. We get to hear this rhetoric every day. But that racism doesn't just run one way. There's only so many times you can smack somebody in the face before they're going to feel obligated to smack you back. Obviously, you're not going to stop. That's the thing with a lot of bullies. You say to turn the other cheek. Well, then they hit you in the other cheek. probably more than once. What you're teaching those people is that violence is okay. Violence will get them what they want. Might makes right. Now, I've gotten to see a few videos of people pulling out their cameras and scaring at. Matter of fact, I'll go to that video right now and we can watch that before we leave. I don't actually intend on making this a super long video. It's already 10 minutes long, and 20 minutes long is about the longest I can make a video. Let me see. Alright, I'll turn up the volume so that you guys can hear this, and then we will put my camera up so that we can actually watch this video. I smoke filterless cigarettes, so I can't remember what they call it, but it's a stem that you put your cigarette in. Hope you're not too offended by it. Alright, so through this situation, what I've told my friends and family members who I was supposed to go to for help, and I'm instructed to go to for help, I told them from the start I need someone to go in with me who knows what's going on and knows me. Otherwise, they're only going to listen to my predator's side. They're not going to bother listening to me. They're going to call me mentally ill and pretend I'm schizophrenic and delusional. What I need you to do is, number one, go in with me informed, and number two, record it. Nearly all of these folks that I was sent to for help didn't want to record anything, and they didn't want to be recorded either. Imagine that. So let's try to hold this up so that you can see. Everybody in this neighborhood is pointing their cameras at ICE. They're all speaking up, something that my so-called friends were too cowardly to do. Let's rewind it all the way back to the beginning. Look at how many of these people are pointing their phones at them.
You can jeer, but the one thing they have no answer to is when you laugh at them.
I don't think it's giving you enough energy.
Now, are these people heckling these folks? Yes. Of course they are. Why wouldn't they? We're getting to see a repeat of 1956. They don't care. Anybody with an accent, which, if you've ever been to the Crow Agency reservation, you're well aware that there's an accent there. Does that make it okay to kick people out of the country or detain them? So, yeah, there's 3 missing members of the Oglala Sioux who are still missing. I also want to ask y'all to put your prayers out there for the Not Afraid family, and for the Big Hair family, and for the Two Dogs family. Each of those families has lost